just don't feel uncomfortable with the here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all those tuned into Central Praise Radio. We are the St. Kitts National Men's Council, and we are happy to be with you again this evening. We would have liked it to be a more regular affair, and so we apologize to those of you who listen, and we may or may not, I'm not sure, have promised that we would be here every week or every other week or once per month. Whatever we did promise, we've not kept that. And so I apologize on behalf of the Men's Council, and I am certainly hoping that as we proceed, as we move forward, we will in fact get to a point where we will religiously, as we say, be here on a set basis, whether it be the first Monday, the second Monday, the first and second Monday, the third Monday, whatever the schedule is, we will endeavor to be represented. And there are a number of us in the council who are able to do justice to whatever issue the council deems appropriate for the moment. And so you'll either hear my voice or the voice of any of the other members, any of the other men of the council. This evening, Monday, 29th September 2025, we want to talk a little bit about freedom and independence, Independence and freedom. You know, we just celebrated, or are still celebrating, 42 years of independence, so-called, and so independence is still in the air, in a manner of speaking. So Dwight is here, Dwight the Great Berridge, and we will, for the next 50 minutes or so, talk with you about that matter, freedom and independence, or independence and freedom. And we still wish to express regret that we are not yet able to have a direct dialogue with you by way of your calling in and asking questions and making comments and suggestions and expressing opinions, etc. We are hoping that sooner than later we will arrive at that destination where it will be an interactive exchange of ideas, of views, of information between you and us. And we are hoping that that will be facilitated in quick time. And so we say welcome to all of you, and thank you for choosing to listen or to be listening to Central Praise Radio this evening. We also want, on behalf of the Men's Council, to congratulate my former student, Leroy Weeks. Leroy Weeks was one of the first set of students whom I taught when I first started my working career, having just left sixth form, Bassey High School sixth form, the real sixth form, back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. When I was posted at Keon High School, Leroy Weeks was one of the students whom I had in one of my classes. I think it would have been third form. He would have been the third form at the time. So I want to congratulate him on this setup here, establishing a radio station, as it were, and doing a good job. I really love to see when my students have succeeded. And I can measure success. I can tell you what I determine success to be. So I'm happy to see Leroy proceeding well in this endeavor. I know that my other student, Dwight, who's here, I would have taught him later, after I would have taught Leroy. He too is into this kind of thing, but on a lesser scale. And so congratulations are also in order. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just finished celebrating, or are still celebrating, my correction there, independence. And we've been hearing for years that we are not really independent. I'm sure at the time of independence in 1983, some person scoffed and said to themselves and said to others, said it out loud, St. Kitts and Nevis going independent? What is that? How can they be independent? And I remember penning a poem, which if I had known we would be discussing this matter this evening, I could have walked with it, where I questioned in that poem, in that poetic piece, whether St. Kitts and Nevis were in fact ready for independence. Did we understand what independence meant? We know that other islands in the Caribbean had already achieved independence. In fact, we were the last as an associated state to receive independence. The other islands which are not yet independent are still colonies. overseas territories of Britain, Montserrat, British Virgin Islands, and Anguilla, Turks and Caicos, and Cayman Islands. But we here, we claim to be independent. 19 September 1983, St. Kitts and Nevis achieved independence. It must be emphasized that we are talking about political independence. But many persons question even that. Well, we certainly are not economically independent. We are not mentally independent. We are not socially independent. We are politically independent, they say. But we can examine that. And here is where I really wish we could have had an exchange between you, the listeners, and ourselves. What is political independence? And to what extent can St. Kitts and Nevis lay claim? By the way, I foresee a time when Nevis is going to break away from St. Kitts. And you can tell Mark Brantley, a former student, that tomorrow. You can tell Terence Drew, or the incoming Prime Minister, whenever we have next elections, whoever that is going to be, you can tell him or her that I say that is my view. That it is destined that St. Kitts be separated from, or Nevis be separated. St. Kitts be separated from Nevis, or Nevis be separated from St. Kitts. That is what I see happening, and in my lifetime, I might add. And when I make that statement, I'm not necessarily asking for anyone to support me. I can defend that ism. I can defend that ism. That ism, or ism, if you wish. So, are St. Kitts and Nevis political independent? Well, of course, we know that up to 19 September 1983, Great Britain was responsible for our entirety, our external affairs, our defense, matters to do with an extra regional nature. Being an associated state with Great Britain, it means we had a certain level of internal autonomy, where we could elect our own representatives, and those representatives would go into the House of Assembly, Parliament, and pass certain laws, and so on. But having achieved political independence, it means we were no longer bound to Britain in order for us to be able to pursue our own foreign relations, in order for us to have to defend ourselves if push came to shove, physically defend ourselves, that is, from aggression and from threats and so on. And we will not have been able to join certain international organizations. We will not have been able to lay claim to certain assets. We will not have been able to join the international financial organizations and approach them for loans and assistance, quote unquote, and so on. The diplomatic footprint, which is the term that the ministers of foreign affairs that they like to use, we would not have had any, because Britain would have been representing us wherever and whenever. But we can now boast, quote unquote, of having established relations, diplomatic relations, they say, with a number of countries on all of the continents that dot this magnificent blue planet. So, one can argue that we do have some level of political independence. I mean, we have established relations, political relations, diplomatic relations with Taiwan, for example, of the first country with which we did so. With the United States, we have diplomatic relations with almost all of the countries in Europe, certainly all those in the Schengen area. We have diplomatic relations with many countries in Africa, with many of them in Asia, with most of them in Central and South America, Latin America, as we say. We were able, for example, to establish our own relations, diplomatic relations with Cuba, and so on. The government that led us into independence refused to have such relations with Cuba, but the government that replaced that one, the second Prime Minister, thought that it would be a wise thing to establish diplomatic relations with Cuba, and nobody could tell us no, as it were. Nobody could say, hey, don't do this or don't do that. Well, they can say that, but they really don't have any power to stop us, any real legal power to stop us. And so, to the extent that we can make friends with who we wish we are independent. All right. To the extent that we have our own passport, right? We are no longer British citizens. We are now citizens of St. Kitts, of a country called St. Kitts and Nevis. We are citizens of that country. That's our nationality. We are no longer British people, so to speak. So, to me, in that very limited and narrow sense, we are independent. And we exercise some freedom within that independence. But I would like to plant the proposition this evening, mount a platform if you wish, to argue that we are not anywhere, close to being truly independent. We are far from economically independent. And for me, if one is not economically independent, if one has to depend on others for his physical survival, then all other types of independence fade and take second and third place, in my view. Over to Dwight.
Yes, it's very interesting as you open up this discussion on what it is to be independent as a country, as a nation. You know, my mind goes back to the national anthem, "O land of beauty, our country where peace abounds, thy children stand free on the strength of will and love. With God in all our struggles, St. Kitts and Nevis be, a nation bound together with a common destiny." So, one of the things that I'm happy for is that being independent, the political independence at least, we're able to have our own identity in terms of our national anthem. You know, you mentioned St. Kitts and Nevis, that they may come when we could be separated. But what's the implication for all of that with the national anthem and all of that? With saying that we are a nation. You have to go know all these things, we have to reset. Have a new anthem, new flag and all of that for Nevis and all, you know. So I don't know. I don't see that happening anytime soon. That's just my point of view. But to be independent, you know, I agree with you totally when it comes to the economics of the country, and we're not there. We often have to borrow money. We are always crying in International Monetary Fund, or get monies from other agencies. You know, we are many times in the red. You know, we sometimes have to rely. Our military is not really there in terms of the strength, the capacity, you know, to defend this country. You know, we have a lot to consider when we talk about independence. We have a lot to really look at as a country. For the past 42 years, we have made strides in different areas. We've been successful in, I would say, in the education aspect. In some parts, we have universal education. We no longer rely on the British system. We have the Caribbean Examinations Council, CSEC. We have our local exams, and we've made some progress in terms of our carving out our curriculum and the pathway to that. But we are not. They're still. I suppose you may have something to say on that, but I suppose that we still have a lot of mileage to go, and many objectives to achieve in order to really say that we are independent, right? The question is, what do we what do we do? Where do we go from here? We have been since the 19th of September 1983. We gained political independence from Britain, and 42 years have come and gone. I can remember the first time when in 1983 as a small boy, and I was so excited when we heard about this Independence Street that we got in school. Was really awesome. We got now a lot of rice and chicken and ice cream and cake. It was the best ever. I don't see a treat like that since the first independence. I remember William Manasseh Connell going to the park and giving the independence message and all of that. So it was a one it's a wonderful aspect of our nation's history. I think that one must applaud, the effort that was made to become to get there. But like you said, there's still a lot. The question it begs the question of how are we truly independent, and that would be a question that would be asked for many years from now on, for many years ongoing.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. Dwight would have made a couple of comments. Some of them I don't necessarily subscribe to, but then to each his own. The question you raised, Dwight, about the implications for our national anthem and our other national symbols, the flag, the motto, and so on, it's of no moment, because either one of us think it's on it can retain the same anthem with minor changes. Where it refers to St. Kitts and Nevis, you can simply refer to just one. Okay? Or we can both construct new national anthems. That's a piece of cake. I think you know me. I can write the national anthem tomorrow. That is to say the words, and somebody puts music to it.
Right.
That's nothing. And of course, we have so many artistic experts, designers who can easily design a flag, and one which does not look so close to that of another. Because I find that our flag, as pretty as it is pretty close in design and resemblance to that of Tanzania. I've said that for years.
Yes.
So we can easily design another flag which does not bear that kind of close resemblance to any other flag. It can be totally unique in its appearance and so on. As for the motto, country above self, it's an excellent motto. We can either country can retain it, either island can retain it, or we both get new mottos, or one of us can keep it, right? Because I think it's a great motto, which is why I think that the author of the motto, or the individual, Udival Guyo, who is claiming to have composed the motto, and without any challenge from any other individual or institution, we have never identified anyone over the years, and he has now come forward and said he's the one who actually brought the motto forward. I believe him, and I think he should be recognized. But so those changes are minor in my view. Right? Fundamentally, I believe if Nevis and St. Kitts were to go separate ways in terms of Nevis seceding, or St. Kitts, but St. Kitts is not allowed to secede. But if Nevis were to secede, according to the Constitution, that is, St. Kitts is not allowed to secede. But if Nevis secedes, the question is what kind of relationship would the people have? The very fraternal bonds that now exist, would they be ruptured?
Yeah, blood ties.
Will we still have the regular transportation communication? Well, if both islands were to go separate ways, I don't see any reason why that has to be disrupted. I don't see any reason. It is not axiomatic that because Nevis secedes and now has its own government and becomes its own independent country, or we resort to being on the umbrella of Great Britain, or whatever configuration they adopt. I don't see why that would mean that we no longer have the water taxes, or we no longer have the ferries ferrying people back and forth. I don't see why.
What about the Constitution? Because
of course the Constitution would have to be rewritten, because the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. It means that St. Kitts would have it. I mean, we need a new Constitution right now anyway.
As it is, there are some.
As it is, it is very deficient.
Yeah.
So we need a new Constitution, and I already put forward a number of suggestions as to changes that should be included in a new Constitution. All right, but that would have to be rewritten. You spoke of our military is not there. Our military is nowhere. We don't have a military. Having served in the military, my so-called military myself, for a number of years, I mean, I remember one guy from Britain, the British Army, coming, and after he saw us and how we behaved and so on, he referred to us as soldier crabs. Soldier crabs. Uh, at another point, other person referred to us as toy soldiers. We don't have, we are military. There is no military. And St. Kitts does not need a military.
A defense force.
All right? And so when Dr. Simmons, in my mind, in his wisdom, closed down the military early in his tenure in the early 1980s, I think he did a good thing. What he did was to strengthen the police force and create a special arm, the SSU, of the police force to deal with certain matters. But I really don't think, although I served in it and I benefited from my service because, you know, I liked a lot of what I learned, I don't think that St. Kitts needs the military. I don't think any of the islands in the Caribbean, except maybe Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. Sorry, Guyana is not an island. But Guyana definitely needs a military. In the members of CARICOM, Trinidad and Tobago needs the military, Bahamas needs the military, Belize needs the military, Jamaica needs the military. I don't think St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica or Barbados, I don't think any one of us needs the military. What do the military do? To protect the country from whom? I mean, think about it. If St. Kitts had a military, a real military, or our so-called military now, who can we defend St. Kitts from if any island or the country, any other country were to want to attack St. Kitts or invade St. Kitts? Who can, our military can protect St. Kitts from invasion? From whom? When all it needs is a country with 2 helicopters. 2 helicopters. And they can, I believe St. Kitts can be easily taken over. That's my view, right? So we don't have a military and we don't need a military. The so-called army that we have, we don't need it. I don't mind having a reserve defense force for ceremonial purposes because they add flavor and color to parades and ceremonies and so on. But in terms of a standing army and a regular military force, I don't believe we need one. All right. Then you speak of our being successful in education. I challenge you on that. I want you to. You said we have universal secondary education. For your information, we've had universal secondary education since 1966, almost 20 years before independence. So universal secondary education is not a creature of independence. We have the self program. That too was before independence. Simmons created that. I think I might have to confirm that. But the point is, I wanted to show you where we have been successful in education. You say that we now have CXC. Well, having been through both GCE and CXC, I can say with utter clarity, without any apology, I found GCE to be superior in in many ways, in every aspect, to CXC. Having been to mark CXC myself, having written and taught GCE, I find that GCE is a better exam, a more challenging and reliable exam than CXC. Right? So, you speak about being successful in education since independence. I really would like to see where that has happened. When in 2009 we built under the leadership of Sam Conda as Minister of Education, we built this Sadler Secondary School. I thought that was going to be an excellent innovation, intervention, invention in education because the school was supposed to be a school that focused on technology. Some said the leadership at the time missed the mark and they were not able to lead the school in that direction and ended up being a regular high school. But I believe that had succeeded, that vision that people like the Honorable Sam Conda, Mr. Osmond Petty, and Dr. Patrick Welcome as CEO, that they had in mind. I think if that had borne fruit, it would have been an excellent, something we could have boast of as a post-independence baby. But that has not happened.
So, something good for education.
In terms of, well, the Ministry of Education has still not promulgated or adumbrated a definition of success in education, right? And if you see the Minister of Education before me, ask him what is his definition, his understanding of success in education. What is your definition of success in education? Because you say that we have been successful in education. How do you measure that success?
We
Apart from, well, you said that, you did say we have universal secondary education and we are now part of CXC. We do CXC. We have our own exams or something like that.
we have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to get too much into it, but
better not.
we have, yeah, right. But I was looking at as a nation, as an independent nation,
Yeah.
some of the pointers or the benchmarks, some of the things that we can, indicators that can say, well, we have been successful in since we became independent. We can boast, we can say.
Are
as-
those indicators or indices any better than those from Montserrat, which is still a colony, and Anguilla, which is still a colony, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, and so on? Or you're not aware of those statistics? You're not aware of those statistics?
I don't know.
Exactly. You better check them out, and you'll find that we're not doing any better than any one of those British overseas territories, any one of those colonies.
So you would purport that it would have been better if we had remained
No,
a colony?
I'm not saying that.
Oh.
I'm simply saying that as an independent country, we have nothing to show in very many fields, including fields of education. We have nothing to show in education. We have nothing to show in agriculture. We have nothing to show in technology. We have nothing to show.
Health, tourism.
The only thing we have to show, as I said earlier, is in the area of that just slipped me. In the area of
We have made strides in tourism. We have made.
my apologies there. In terms of agriculture, for example,
Agriculture, yeah.
I mean, we have shown in sorry, yeah, the only area in which you have shown progress is in the field of diplomacy, where we have been able to have diplomatic relations with many countries around the world. That's the only tangible area which we have achieved, which we could not have achieved if we were not independent. But as an independent country, what have we achieved in these other areas that we could not have achieved, or might not have achieved, or would not have achieved if we were not independent? I can't think of any. Tell you the truth. Alright? I like the question you asked, where do we go from here? I like that question, and that is what we need to discuss. And that is what I would like to hear from our listeners. Where do we go from here? When people boast about saying it's being a sovereign nation and a great country, again I want them to show me the statistics, show me the evidence, show me the manifestation of St. Kitts and Nevis being a great country. I mean, really, I don't know if you want to hazard an explanation right now. Show me one area in which St. Kitts can legitimately be termed a great country. How is St. Kitts a great country? I can show you many areas in which we are not a great country. Far from it. But people like to say this great country of St. Kitts. What makes St. Kitts great? I want somebody to tell me. I am willing to learn. I am listening.
Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord.
Well, what is that, right? Don't speak that kind of platitude. I'm asking you to show me. How is St. Kitts a great country? Because which country in the Caribbean, tell me a country in the Caribbean whose God is not the Lord? One. Apart from Cuba, as a communist country which does not recognize God in its constitution or in its national anthem and so on. Tell me one country apart from Cuba in the Caribbean whose nation, whose God, tell me a nation whose God is not. This one is a nation whose God is the Lord?
Yeah.
Tell me one country whose God is not the Lord.
The thing is,
You can't show me any.
right. I'm thinking.
But there's none.
Right.
And in fact, in several other countries, their motto, their national anthem, and so on, refers to God far more often than ours do. In fact, in some national anthems, which you must get yourself familiar with, the word they refer to God in almost every line. 2, 3 times, 4, 5 times in one verse.
Right.
So, I want you to tell me, so all those countries are great then? Because they mention God. Then God is those are nations whose God is the Lord. So they are great as well. If you're saying that we are great because our nation, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord.
The Christian principles that we try to
So
uphold.
all tell me another country in the Caribbean
Yes.
which doesn't have Christian principles. So I'm asking you to show me, you know. Because if you're going to tell me that all the islands in the Caribbean are like that, then you're admitting then that all of them are great.
Right.
If that's what makes a country
Right,
great.
right. What I would like to say though, as you
And what Christian principles are you talking about? You're
No,
saying
we
it's
have
at the
more
highest
to say
level,
on the-
for you're saying it's at the highest rate of concubinage. You know what that is? Common law marriage. The highest rate of teenage pregnancy. The highest rate of mental illness. We had the highest national debt for in the Caribbean. We had
crime?
the highest levels of crime. We had the highest in the world, or the second highest in the world for a number of years. What are you talking about? What Christian principles?
So, well, what I'm actually saying here,
Yeah.
right, is that, as you mentioned these things, would you say, if you were to turn back the hands of time
Mhm.
before 1983,
Right.
before we became quote unquote independent,
Yes.
were we better off then? What are you saying that it is
I'm not saying that, you know. I'm simply saying that we are no better off now.
we
We really are no better off now than we were then.
because when you look at the living conditions, you know, back then,
Yeah, but then look at all the countries in the Caribbean. It may be around the world, apart from, and Haiti has a problem with gangs. Cuba is the only country which has regressed. And I lived in Cuba, as everybody knows. I worked and lived in Cuba. Cuba has regressed. Instead of progressing into the 21st century as a modern, sophisticated, developed or highly developing country, Cuba has moved back into by quite a number of decades. But which other island in the Caribbean has not achieved similar levels of change and progress? And in some cases, of course, they're higher
so
than
you wouldn't
that.
attribute that change or progress toward because of
No, in other words, these things were inevitable.
Oh,
These things were inevitable. I mean, these things come with the passage of time. Even some of the countries which were once called fourth world, some of the poorest countries in the world, in other continents, in other areas of the world, they too have moved ahead and progressed nicely. So, if saying this is going to be like all the others, then what makes us different? If you're saying as a result of independence, we have our Human Development Index has grown, our per capita income has grown, our GDP, our gross domestic product has grown, our standard of living has grown. I am saying that is the case throughout the Caribbean. That is my counter to that. Throughout the Caribbean, that is the case. Which Caribbean country, which Caribbean independent country has that moved forward in terms of all of those various economic indices or indicators?
What
Which one?
None.
None.
My point, yeah, take
So-
the point. So what would you like to see?
I think no
as we-
problem in saying this is leadership. We have not had very good leadership in a number of areas. Not we have had 4 prime ministers since independence. I'm not saying all 4 have been found wanting, weighed in balance and found wanting. But I think that some have been more guilty than others in terms of not leading us to where we ought to be. I think that leadership is critically fundamental. Just like in a family, in a school, I think in a country, the leadership is fundamental. And I believe that leadership has failed us in a number of ways. So we could have moved ahead. I don't believe we should have suffered from such high national debt at any point in our history. Yes, it has gone down thanks to the previous administration, which brought it down significantly. I don't believe we should have ever have the highest rate of crime in the Caribbean at any point. I mean, on a per capita basis, of course, given our small population. I don't believe that we should have had such high incidences of teenage pregnancy and of mental illness and so many people dying from NCDs and so on. I don't believe we should have had. I'm not saying we would be free of them because we are not yet in utopia or paradise. But I'm saying the high levels, given our small size, they should not have been. And we still have a lot of work to do in order to bring them down. And we're not doing much about it. What is the leadership doing about the high levels of NCDs in St. Kitts? The fact that up to 70% of our adult population is obese or overweight. You know, I go to many functions, whether it be religious, cultural, artistic, entertainment, and so on. And I tend to look at the adults. I look around, and the majority of them are people who weigh more than they ought to weigh, who have more body fat than they ought to have, especially females. A lot of the men have these suffer from abdominal obesity. A lot of men have beer bellies and big bellies, and a lot of women have that extra excess unnecessary fat spread more over their bodies. For the men, like I said, a lot of it is in their stomach, the waist area, but for women it's all over. What are we doing about it? What has the leadership been doing? Current, past, recent past, and distant past. We just talk about it. We don't do anything about it. And a lot of people are still dying from NCDs. A lot of people are still suffering from NCDs. At one point, we also had the highest rate of amputations in the Caribbean. It was said that our doctors, our surgeons here were so happy. You know, there's some soldiers and police are trigger happy, they like to shoot. Well, these surgeons were said to be so happy, they like to saw off, because everywhere you turn, somebody was losing a leg.
Yeah.
And quite a number of them lost 2 legs, both legs. So, if you're talking about independence and progress, how are you measuring this progress? Apart from, like I said, what obtains in all of the other CARICOM countries? How does St. Kitts stand out?
So,
And bear in mind our population is small, and it is much easier to manage a small population. It is much easier for a small population like St. Kitts to achieve certain heights, to reach certain levels of growth than countries with larger populations.
right.
I mean, just a minute, sorry to interrupt you here, but if you have a family, if you and I are working for $1,000 a month, you have a family of 5, I have a family of 2. Well, certainly my $1,000 can be more nicely spread amongst the 2 of us than your 1,000 among 5. So if the smaller the population, with proper fiscal management by the powers that be, we should really be way ahead, even further ahead than we are, because of our very small size. And it is because of our very small size, by the way, which is causing so much furor and uproar in Nevis and in St. Kitts about this special sustainable zone authorization bill and so on. Because if Honduras were to give 2 square miles of its territory, or even Jamaica, that impact would be nowhere as strongly felt as giving 2 square miles of St. Kitts, far less of Nevis. Why do you think Montserrat is in such dire straits? Because Montserrat is very small, and a lot of the island had to become unlivable as a result of the volcanic eruption.
Yes.
So Montserrat is not a feasible country at this moment. In fact, the British government would like all 4,000 persons who are there to move out and just abandon the country, the island, so it becomes like Redondo or Booby Island and just be there and not uninhabited.
Wow.
Because it's not viable with 4,000 people. Because too much of the land was taken up by the volcanic eruption. But in this case, it's not the volcanic eruption that is taking up the land, apparently. It is a different kind of behavior and arrangement. So,
well, the theme for this year's independence,
yeah,
perpetual progress, a sustainable future in view for Independence 42. Perpetual progress.
Yes, you're talking about the theme, eh?
Yeah.
Anybody anybody can concoct to it, but go ahead.
Buzzword, we talk about sustainability, and you know, so everything is.
Would you mind sharing with the audience what sustainability means? For saying it to be a sustainable island state, so saying it's a Nevis. What does that mean? You mind sharing with the audience? Because I would like to ask the Prime Minister to do what I normally do as a teacher. Explain with pellucid clarity, with precise specificity, with unambiguous clarity, what sustainable, what a sustainable island state means.
When I think of sustainability, I think of what we can do as a country to maintain and to keep the
What we can do or what we are doing.
What we should do, what we ought to do,
Right.
and in some instances what we are doing.
Yeah, tell
to
me
get
about
to,
it.
You know,
Tell the audience, tell
you
us
know,
about it. We're
so
listening.
sustain something, you keep it going, keep it alive.
So sustain
so-
is different
so-
from maintain?
Maintain, sustain.
Which one?
Maintain, sustain or maintain, right? Right. So you're looking at sustainability
Mm.
in terms of energy, in terms of
So tell me about energy. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about that one. Yeah.
right. We have different sources of energy. That
Right now we import 100% of our
So-
fuel,
right.
our power supply. We import 100%.
Mhm.
Alright?
Yeah.
Without fuel, we can't have this discussion tonight because there'll be no power,
That's
there'll be
right.
electricity, and so on.
So we have solar.
So Do we have solar at the moment?
solar. We can.
How
I've
much-
seen on some houses people are
What-
putting on solar panels.
what percentage-
on the roofs?
What percentage does solar
Panels.
produce in St. Kitts? In other words, 100% we use electricity, we use
Yes.
power. Sorry,
Yes.
we use power. Of that 100%, does solar power provide 1%, 10%, 50%, 80%? What?
I can't tell you how much, but I know that a significant. Let me just say it. I know some persons as I look around, I drove around, I'm seeing on a few house roofs.
A few.
Yeah, some panels that are being constructed to
Installed.
installed, so that they can benefit from the sun's energy.
Right. And
right?
so,
and electricity.
if all of us were to do that,
Yeah.
let's suppose all of us who own homes in St. Kitts were to install solar panels on our roofs and harness the sun's energy, you think that means that we are sustainable?
No,
That's what I'm saying.
that is one way we can. That is one way we can reduce the amount that we spend on fossil fuels, the amount that we spend for electricity service, because
That would help with the water supply, in other words, because when I go home, water would have been shut off when I go home, when I leave here this evening. Right? In next 10
not
minutes.
necessarily water is a different, because
So sustainable.
so
So
you're looking at
we
things-
have we no longer have to import fuel for our power. Right? You're talking about sustainability. So we reach 100% independence of fuel imports for power purposes. But at the same time, we still have water being shut off at 7 o'clock at evenings and
That's
some
because
some-
the precipitation is low, Sometimes we at different times of the year. we
So for
find
you,
that-
you're saying we can still boast of being sustainable, even if we still
Yeah,
have
but
water problems.
well,
but
we're
we no
moving-
longer
What is-
import fuel.
what is being done, you'll find that a lot of people are having these tents that the government,
Tents?
not tents, these tanks, sorry,
Oh, okay.
where they can store water, right?
Yeah.
Some folk have cisterns and so on in their houses. And to combat that,
Okay.
when the rainfall is low, they can tap into that
Okay.
source. So these are ways and means.
I see.
You-
Well, I want to disagree with you that. My view of sustainability is when we get to a point where we have enough food, we produce, if not 100%, because that might not be possible, 80% and above of the food that we need to eat to survive. For me, that is the first and most fundamental, most basic step of sustainability.
Okay.
And we are doing nothing about that. Every
So-
item you see in the supermarket, apart from a few fruits, but I'm not even sure about fruits, because even bananas are imported. The bulk of the bananas that the supermarket sell, bulk, if not 100%, of bananas that the supermarket sell is imported. Now and again you find some sweet potatoes which are locally produced, some carrots. So up to 95% of the food items which you see in the supermarket, 95% is imported. All the bread, I think it's like a lot of bread, is made from flour, which is imported. And that's just one of the ingredients, of course, the flour. Because we import bread is made with sugar and salt and all that. We import all of the ingredients to make bread. Right? So,
So,
for me, to speak of sustainability, we get to a point. That's why I don't like the national dish, because national dish, to make the national dish, you have to depend heavily on imported items. The saltfish, the dumpling, because you need flour for the dumpling, the
coconut is gone.
the coconut.
Is here.
Excuse me,
We have.
where do we find local coconuts? Are you aware that
As-
all the coconuts you see in supermarkets are imported?
Wait a minute. When you drive down by that St. Paul's area, there was a grove there.
Man, don't talk about what you used to be, guys. Of course, there used to be a grove when you were down. You taught you. There was a big coconut grove there. Yeah, since when that has disappeared? That you're talking about the time when vehicles
Okay,
were
let's go back to the dish. So the coconut and the bread food. The bread food we can get.
Yeah,
that.
but I'm saying a national dish
the plantain we can get.
like the one ingredient which I had when I was there. All of the ingredients are locally produced, so
Okay.
we can't have a national dish,
Yeah.
and we depend so heavily on imported items, including for some of the main ingredients, right?
But well, you made me think when it comes to sustainability about food, because I was thinking other things like technology and
No, so I'm saying that for me, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
sustainability means. You don't have to agree with me.
yeah.
Nobody has to agree with me. This is my view. We cannot speak of sustainability in St. Kitts, or St. Kitts needs to be a sustainable island state, unless and until we are very close to being independent, having an independent food supply, food security, and food availability, and food affordability, and food accessibility. Food availability, accessibility, and affordability.
That's foremost.
And the food must be produced here. Why do we import so much sweet potatoes and white potatoes when we have more than enough land acreage to produce more than enough for domestic demand? Why do we produce so much carrots, so much
Are you aware that the monkey?
so many onions, so much cabbage, so much pepper? Why do we import all these things? Again, I'm saying to you, you go to the supermarket, do I? And I challenge you, go and take up 10 items,
Yeah,
and more than half of them are not imported. Whether it be food or vegetables.
yeah.
Because the onions
I
are
was just going to tell you that
we're in bad shape.
that the monkeys are a threat to the agriculture.
If the boats do not
I'm
come,
telling you.
if the boats do not come for whatever reason, whether it be weather, or whether it be terrorism, or whether it be disease or disaster, because the folks are saying the next COVID, quote unquote, will be far worse than the COVID we've had. So boats might not in fact be coming. We're going to be in big trouble. Because everything, people like to say, we must store up canned goods, non-perishable foods. Where did they all come from?
Foreign.
It's amazing. We're in bad shape.
Um,
So when people talk about sustainable island state, I want them to tell me what they mean, and to how far are we away, how close are we, or how far are we, how close are we to, or far away from really being a sustainable island state. To me, it is just rhetoric, empty rhetoric. That's what I find it to be. Platitudinous rhetoric. Because to be sustainable means you can depend on yourself, and in such a way, not only does it satisfy current demands, but for posterity. You have enough. You make a foundation strong and firm and deep and solid enough for the rising generation, for generations yet unborn, to come and enjoy. What we have is a cycle of we're recycling dependence on imported this and dependence on imported that. All the clothes we wear, imported.
I like the word you use, posterity for posterity.
All the shoes we wear,
Yeah.
all the cars we drive, and the fuel we need to put in the cars.
So, what I am hearing from you, because I don't think there's much I can say in relation to this aspect of our truly being independent you know.
I am saying we should stop
But-
talking about being great and being sustainable and being
but-
sovereign and build up our own resource base so that we can have less dependence on things external. That is my argument. Stop talking so much. Let the leaders and the NGOs and civic society let's think it stop talking so much about being great and being sovereign and being sustainable and all that, and let us actually begin to work. So let's do work, practical work with the farmers to help them to get to that point where all of
So the progress that we are seeing here,
which progress have we seen?
the economic, the development, the infrastructure of the country,
Uh-huh.
roads that are being resurfaced, roads that are being carved out.
You're aware that the roads are still built to now. Even the one that they're building today in 2025, they're still building them to now.
Right.
I mean, we know how the number of vehicles on the road has expanded exponentially, and yet we insist on building roads in the new developments that we are creating. That you can hardly have two vehicles passing simultaneously.
Right.
When in fact they should be making them wide enough so that a vehicle could be parked and two vehicles still pass by without any difficulty. So, but go ahead.
So, what I'm saying, you made the point that the progress that we see in these Caribbean countries, you cannot attribute that to the independence.
No, that's my
You
view.
want to say that?
That's my view.
You're saying that that's
establishing that
inevitable.
position.
That would have been
That these things are almost inevitable. That they happen with the flow of time. They happen with the flow of time because in the non-independent countries, and I said it to you before, Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, and so on,
Right.
they are just as developed or developing.
So is it a bad thing?
We're not ahead of them in any way.
Is it a bad thing to become independent?
No, it is not.
Oh.
Definitely not. But I'm saying we should stop talking so much about boasting about being independent and in fact work towards establishing less dependence on things external. Go home and look in your house and ask yourself how much of that is produced locally. Whether it be furniture, food, clothing, or whatever the items are. Take an inventory of what you have in your house.
Right.
And ask yourself how much of that is locally produced. And ask yourself if you are independent, if we are independent, based on that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our discussion here on Central Praise. I'm sorry if we disappointed you in any way. But, sometimes you like, it's nice to hear a different version, a different side. We really want to get to a point where we can hear you and hear your views. And who knows, your views might shape ours. And we might have to adopt a different position because of the new information we would have learned from you, because of the new knowledge we would have gained from you. And so we are hoping that Leroy will sooner or later, preferably sooner, be able to have that feature here at Central Praise Radio. Thank you very much for being a part of this discussion. We come from the St. Kitts National Men's Council. And for those of you men in St. Kitts who happen to be listening, we invite you to our monthly meetings, which are held at the Irish Town Primary School. Our meeting for this, if you're talking to men, all the men know that the Irish Town Primary School. Because these are men, in other words, they are adults. Our next meeting, our meeting for the month of October, will be Wednesday the 8th. Wednesday the 8th. That's not Wednesday coming, but next Wednesday, the 8th of October at 5 o'clock at Irish Town Primary School. We'll be glad to have you. Thank you very much, and blessings, peace, and love to all. The final word from Dwight.
Yes, I want to thank you for listening and viewing. I think that we've had a wonderful, very fruitful discussion. I've learned so much. One thing I can take away is that what we have been, we can boast about when it comes to independence is the diplomatic relations that we have established with other countries. I learned about the food, being independent, sustainability, how we need to improve on, depend less on the foreign imports here, and so that's truly good. But also want to say that being free in your mind and having that You know, Bob Marley says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. You know, none but ourselves can free our mind. Independence, freedom, you know, in your belief, in your ideologies, and so don't let anyone, whether it's a politician or anybody, don't let any, you have to have that freedom, you know, within yourself. Be free to think, be free to explore, and I'm certain that you would certainly have success in your different areas of life. So thank you very much, and God bless.
Sige boy,